Suzuka feels as good in F123 as it has in any Formula 1 game to date. It's easily one of the most flowing circuits with a real technical edge. Car placement is everything around this track, as many corners lead directly into one another. This means that if you stray away from the racing line into one corner, you'll almost certainly lose time into the next turn. So a good stable car setup that allows for perfect placement lap after lap will really reward you with consistent lap times throughout a race. While the flowing corners are the area where your driving can gain or lose you the most amount of lap time, you do need to account for the long straights around Suzuka, particularly the extremely long back straight right before 130R. This means we can't set our aero setup too high, so I've gone with a front wing aero of 31 and a rear wing aero setup of 28. Front end grip is ever so important around Suzuka, so a higher front wing will benefit more than a higher rear wing setup. As is the trend with the majority of F123 car setups, a 50% on-throttle diff setup is the best approach around Suzuka. It allows you to easily get the power down out of slower corners such as that hairpin and the final chicane. Then go with an off-throttle setup of 52% to help rotate the car, especially into that slow hairpin, which is often the place where you can understeer the most. With the track being pretty fast, I've set our suspension geometry along the lines of other high-speed car setups. Go with -2.6 on the front camber and -1 on the rear. Then set the front toe to 0.01 and the rear toe to 0.1. For the suspension setup around Suzuka, go with 28 on the front suspension and 10 on the rear. This approach is fairly common throughout many F123 car setups and for good reason. It ensures you reduce understeer by having a stiffer front of the car, and the softer rear allows the car to remain compliant without oversteering too much. For the anti-roll bars, go with 6 on the front and 3 on the rear, and then set the ride height to 34 and 37. Now I've gone for a brake pressure setup of 100% and a brake bias right in the sweet spot for F123 at 55%. And then I've increased the tyre pressures at the front of the car to 23.3 psi. Now despite the long corners putting a lot of load on your outside front tyre, you can get away with a higher tyre pressure at the front as the tyres do have a chance to cool down along the straights. For the rear pressures, I've gone with 20.5 psi, which is about normal for an F123 tyre setup. And that will complete our car setup for Suzuka. And this is easily one of the most enjoyable tracks to race in F123. The flowing corners and relatively fast track layout make for a circuit which is just plain old fun to drive around. During a race you can have some fantastic wheel-to-wheel battles with other drivers, with plenty of spots around the track to overtake. Let me know if you enjoy this track as much as I do and what your favourite track in F123 is currently. And for now guys, enjoy this setup and I will see you out on track.